Hello, and thank you for joining us for the BookFest 2021. April is here, and Patrick Oliver is in the building. My name is Dr. Stephanie Helms Pickett, and I'm excited to moderate this panel. Patrick Oliver is the founder of Say It Loud Readers and Writers Literary Arts Organization, and author of On My Own Vision Board Guidebook for Young People, which happens to be celebrating its fifth anniversary during BookFest. Isn't that
Yes,
amazing? So,
yes.
Patrick, you identify as a literary activist, which I think is just a powerful designation. Please tell us what that means.
Mhm. Well, first, let me give a big shout out to all the individuals who put this great event together, the Book Fest Spring 21. So glad to be a part of it. Let me just give them again a shout out for this organizing and this exciting event, all the great things that are going on, that's happening today. So again, I'm glad to be a part of it. Uh, Literary activists. Let me just say, let me put those two. Literary is someone who enjoys literature, who loves what literature can do for an individual, whether they do it for pleasure, whether they do it for work, whether they do it as an academic. Again, whether they do it for pleasure. An activist obviously is someone who gets out there and makes things kind of maybe equitable or just have fun around it. So I put those two things together and just said, hey, I want to be someone that gets out there and promotes literature. Do it on a full-time basis. Just make sure young people, adults are engaging in activities that are literary focused. People have music parties, listening sessions where I host book signings, readings, and things of that nature. So that's my role as a literary activist.
I love that. Who would put that together but Patrick Oliver? So
Thank you.
let's talk about who or what inspired your love of literacy and writing, and have you always loved it?
Well, it's family, it's community. Growing up in a big family, growing up in a neighborhood where there were newspapers all around. Mostly that's where we got information. We're newspapers, and so I grew up in a family that shared the newspaper on most mornings, as well as my grandfather lived a couple of doors down for me. I used to go to get the newspaper for him and share the newspaper with him. So I grew up in a family that enjoyed reading, and that reading the newspaper went on to magazines. So we love to share information. Somewhat a nosy family, wanted to know what was going on around the world in the community. So we wanted to be on top of it when the community conversations came up about what was going on in the world. We wanted to be part of that conversation. So obviously we had to read. And so I think that inspired me when people started asking me questions about current events. It's like, wow, people are coming to me asking me about current events, and I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to be prepared to answer those questions. So a lot of individuals in the community I grew up in knew I loved sports. And so I made sure I had all my sports facts and figures together. So people used to always come to me and say, hey, Patrick, well, what happened with this team, or this player, that player? And I kind of took pride in that. I enjoyed that. And that also, I got that from my grandfather. I used to ride the bus with him to downtown Little Rock. And people used to ask him questions, Mr. Dave, what about this? What about that? He would respond to it. So that kind of gave me that sense that, wow, reading can bring you some level of acknowledgement. And I enjoy being acknowledged for my love of reading and literature. So that made me just want to read more. And when people ask me questions, I was prepared to answer a lot of their questions around sports, politics, whatever the case may be, even at a young age.
That's simply amazing when I consider that, and thinking as a young child, did you see yourself going into this path? Talk to us about what it was like being a young child and being in love with sports and maybe not choosing that avenue, but instead becoming a literary activist and becoming an educational consultant and really centering your work and practice in literacy.
My two goals, like most young people growing up in the South, impoverished neighborhoods, hey, we wanted sports was one way out. All of us wanted. I played sports growing up, basketball, football, but I was a small kid, thin, so I used to get beat up a lot playing sports because I was one of the smaller kids. So it came early right away that hey, I may not be too good at this, kind of frail. But I enjoyed the game. I was competitive, but I also love reading, so I connected. Maybe I see a lot of lawyers on television. I said, well, maybe law may be something I want to do. So again, I used to read a lot, just thinking about, hey, maybe I will become a lawyer. But later in life, wasn't a great college student, and so I decided, let me just focus on this maybe business. I thought about that as well, but just kept enjoying reading until I coached sports. I enjoyed that. Baseball, basketball. I enjoyed nurturing young men who enjoy sports. I was known growing up in the neighborhood at this high school, kind of one the kid who coached a baseball team to a city baseball title. So title game, we lost 1-0. But hey, we got there to the city title game. Lost 1-0. So it was very exciting. But left Little Rock, Arkansas at the age of 19, 19 and a half. After a year of college in Arkansas, or a year and a half of college in Arkansas, and went to Southern California. And that's when more opportunities for me to really understand the power of literature. Was when I started going to some of the community events where authors were book signings, and it was just so fascinating to all of a sudden meet some of the authors that I had saw in magazines or heard people talk about. They were actually at book fairs and conventions and different things that were accessible. So that was exciting to me. And then I had a chance to work in the aerospace industry and work for a company that gave me an opportunity that was kind of close to being a lawyer, but becoming a contract administrator. So that's what I knew then, the power of reading.
I'm curious in terms of your trajectory and how you landed where you did. You mentioned I wasn't that great of a college student, but here you are being an advocate for reading and literacy and writing. Talk a little bit about that point. And because I think even myself as being a higher education administrator, college is not necessarily the path for everyone, but it doesn't mean that you won't garner extreme success. And I think reading is a critical theme that erupts there. So talk about what it meant for college and why you decided to pivot to something else that has worked out pretty well.
Yeah. I wasn't a bad college. I wasn't a great college. I wasn't a bad college student. The one thing about it, reading early, the reading I talked about, reading newspapers and that sort of thing, really helped me with the papers I had to write. I mean, I wasn't a good studier, but when time came to turn papers in to take tests, I was on top of the game because I could read. I mean, I could look at a question on a particular exam, and reading is very analytical. And so I was analytical in my reading, even just reading the newspaper. You're dissecting words, sentences, and things like that. So it was somewhat easy for me, to transition to college. The reason I didn't do well because I didn't have a mentorship. I mean, I left from housing projects of Little Rock, Arkansas, onto a major college campus. Without really, I knew people on campus, but there wasn't a counselor's office that I walked into. I just selected some classes, and I took those classes. And I thought the classes that I took were going to prepare me for the future. So it wasn't like I didn't like college. I just didn't have the right guidance at the time. And so when I went through college, it was more of a rites of passage for me, in terms of my growing up, being nurtured in an environment where there were a lot of adults who were interested in my future, but also in a lot of ways encouraged me to ask me the question, are you sure this is what you want to do? Because you're not focused like you should be. So it was a tremendous challenge, very tremendous challenge.
You're speaking about the influence of community, and that is paramount for anything that we do, for having adults in our lives that are speaking into us and asking the right questions to help lead and guide us. And speaking from my own experience of being a first generation college student, that preparedness, that mentoring wasn't necessarily given to me in a way that other people may have had it. So it took a lot of work of being in that environment. And often with competing priorities that are happening, literacy doesn't always fall at the forefront, right? But you have lifted up that it has been something that has played a significant role at every point in your life. Um, Talk to us about some of the success stories that you've been able to inspire with this work that you've dedicated yourself to in terms of literacy.
Well, one of the things that, again, in Southern California, working in the aerospace industry, that really, I find that as a major achievement in my life, because going into the company as a expert, the title was expert, moving parts from one location to the other, and I got tired of all these extra trips and little procedure about, hey, this I can make this much easier for myself. And the supervisor's like, wow, you wrote this? And it was like, this is gonna make it easy for the entire company, you know. So I was trying to cut some, you know, my workload, and it ended up being a company procedure, you know. And so for me, that was like, wow, the power of writing. I just wrote a simple, you know, half a page and say, hey, we do this, we do that. And again, I was just trying to cut my workload, but it saved the company time, money, and a whole lot of things, you know, and a different way of doing things. So, and when a job became open in my department at a much higher level than my job, and it required a college degree, which I didn't have at the time, I was, you know, taking some community college classes, and they offered it to me, and so that was a reminder for me that, hey, you got to, you know, step it up more. And then, you know, later they moved me to a job. Well, we left that major corporation, aerospace company, and moved to another company who offered me a job, a better, much better job, as a senior contract administrator. So I got closer to my, at one point, wanted to be a lawyer, but a contract administrator somewhat does the same thing a lawyer does: look at documents all day, review them, and negotiate for particular conditions. And I found that to be very fascinating. So in some ways, I was like, wow, I'm back to where I wanted to be. And from that, I would say, leaving the aerospace industry got downsized because we cut the defense budget. And I moved back to Arkansas and I opened a bookstore art gallery. And so that became a maturation point as well as an achievement. And while running the bookstore art gallery, a local organization, church affiliated, started a literary arts program, and asked, came to my business one day and asked me, could I become the director of their after school program? It's like, how can I do this? And I got a bookstore and art gallery on my plate. They said, hey, whatever time you can give us, we'll take it. You know, and that's when I found out about young people and the challenges they face around literacy, operating this after school program that they thought they were going to come in and just have fun. But it's like, no, we're going to read and write. And so that was the beginning of my work, really looking at what is it going to take for young people maybe to be the next Patrick Oliver and have an opportunity at a major aerospace company and be literate enough where if they offer you an opportunity that you can step right in and take advantage of that opportunity to work for a, you know, major corporation. That's what, again, housing projects in Little Rock, Arkansas. End up in Los Angeles, California, working as a contract administrator. And my job basically was negotiating deals with other major aerospace companies around the country. So I traveled, company, credit card, all those sorts of things, analyzing data, negotiating with engineers, having engineers on my team. So, you know, it was those things early in life, the reading and writing got me to the point where now I went through that process and now I'm back in the community, giving back and promoting literature.
I'm still blown away of thinking about your path and how incredible it has been and how impactful. You could be doing this work with any population. Tell us why specifically you have rooted yourself in the advocacy for children and young adults. Why that demographic?
Because again, you know, back to the point, I was just shocked and disappointed when I took the position as director of the after school program, how far kids were behind in their reading levels. And knowing that they were not too far from uh, college and real life. 18 years old, some old school parents say it's time to go. You know, got to get out of my house. And in some ways, that was the thought process that, like boys, you got to go to the job, do something, go to college, do something. And knowing that these children were not ready for that next step in life, I said, well, what could I do? How could I use my current skill set, my skill set of writing proposals, my skill set of uh, developing new strategies, new ideas that I had learned in the advocacy industry. How could I help with that? So that's what I decided to do, was to look at these funding sources all over the country and how could they help children in the community. Then I found out there were a lot of funding sources who could help develop young people who were involved in after school programs, in school programs. And again, my passion for young people was because, again, being immersed in the process, because oftentimes we read about what's happening to these young people, but once you get involved with these young people, you find out that it's more than just academic. There are other issues around them that must be addressed as well. Parents, community, how their community is supporting the development and nurturing of these young people. So that's why I decided, hey, let me expose these young people, first of all, to literary art. Let them understand the power of reading and writing, and how reading is extremely transformative. That if you read and see particular ideas that you never saw before, that you may say, hey, if Nicky Giovanni came from this environment, Maya Angelou came from this environment, if Carl Brown came from this environment, hey, maybe I can do the same thing too. So I wanted to show young people that if you are literate and if you are exposed to new things through literature, the opportunities are endless.
You and I have something in common. So I've worked with after school programs as well. And it was really centered in the fact of the data that was emerging about the school to prison pipeline. And so having the after school programs, specifically affordable after school programs for families in schools that were not achieving to the extent that the state wanted them to, was really important. And when we started, some folks were just excited about, the price, because it was maybe $15 a week. And we know that childcare is very, very expensive, and trying to make sure that you have ways to be able to meet that obligation can be tough. So literacy played an incredible role, and writing played an incredible role. What are some of the best practices that you are employing? Because when I look at social media, there are a lot of things that can take young people's attention away from thinking about reading and writing. But we know that it's important that they have that, because we want their reading scores and their interest in reading to be high, so that they won't succumb to other elements that present themselves. So what are you doing that's making young people lean in and say, yeah, this is what I want to do?
I start with the premise: who are you and what interests you? That's the primary thing. You have these books should mirror children's experiences. They will be attracted to literature and writing when their experiences are in those books, and information they're given to learn from. I think it's just only fair. I mean, to immediately drop something on children and say, hey, here's something new ideas, concepts I want you to learn about. Well, why not try to give them something they're familiar with? Because if children can write and learn about something they're familiar with, it will flow out. I mean, it would just come out with no problem, because again, they're doing this every day. This is their life. So why not ask them about, hey, how was your week? How was your spring break? What did you guys have for dinner last night? Or who prepared it? How did you prepare? Just simple, basic things to kind of get them in the early stages of, wow, this was easy. I mean, all I had to do is reflection on what my life was about. What was the day? What was the last week? And that's that's the work that I do. And those are the processes that I take, and the methodology that I use. That get young people to write about what they're familiar, with, their culture, their surroundings. You know, let them write about it. And most important, the books and material that's used in the classroom, it must mirror their experiences, their life experiences, because to continue to push something on them and try to when you're frustrated, say, why am I getting this? Well, it's not of interest. You know, I mean, they're young, and people always say, well, they should be interested because this is what they're going to face in the future. But right now, they're not facing it right now. Right now, they're not in an overly diverse community. That's what happened, you know, to me growing up in the South. I mean, I grew up, again, in Little Rock, just black and white community. That's it. You know, so our teachers understood that. So we read a lot, Paul Laurence, Barton Grumman books, you know, all the major black writers and artists. We read about them because they spoke our language. They told our stories. You know, it was later in Southern California when I went to college, community college in Southern California. That's when I learned about Asian writers, Hispanic writers, you know, and more diverse writers. But the educators I grew up with, because we go to predominantly black school, that's what they shared with us. And in schools nowadays that are more diverse, a lot of programs that I work with now are more diverse. So I have a lot of Hispanic children uh, that I work with now. So now we're sharing works by Hispanic writers, you know, works by Black writers, and and the children enjoy it, both Black and white, because they see the similar cultural experiences around food, around celebration, around relationship with the parent and the community, and they're learning more about each other's skills. Just simple things like foods. You know, I was laughing just 2 days ago. Tuesday, well, I was sharing with the students that I enjoy mangoes. When Hispanic kids were just excited because like, you like mangoes, and some of the African American children like mangoes. You know, they were familiar with because of Jamaican culture, but you know they didn't realize Hispanic children love mangoes as well. So just small things like that. You know that we were discussing ice cream, and one of the Hispanic girls said, "I had some mango ice cream," and some of the kids, African American kids, and they hadn't heard of mango ice cream, primarily strawberry, vanilla. So it's again culture, embracing, bringing in different cultural experiences, and that should be primary, and it should not be overlooked, and should not be seen as a small thing because it's extremely important. The comfortability, how comfortable children are with the material they're reading and learning from.
You're centering this conversation and thinking about diversity and equity and inclusion. And that's the headspace that I play in daily in terms of my practice. And the bedrock begins when folks are young, doing exactly what you're talking about, because it's not representation is not only important for marginalized communities, Black and brown communities, Asian American communities. It's important for everyone. It's important
Everyone.
for everyone to see. So if it happens to be a white student, they need to read about Black experience, and Black experience needs to learn about Asian American and Pacific Islanders experience. That is community, and that's how we start building. You, when you were speaking, I just had some wonderful memories. So similar, I didn't grow up in the South, but I grew up on the South side of Chicago, which was very much Black and white. It wasn't until I went away to college that I even went to school with someone that didn't share my race. But I could remember in elementary school when RIF would come, reading is fundamental. I had to look it up and thinking about our conversation and seeing if it still exists, and it does. And when the kids would go up on stage, you just hope that you could go up first, because they would go up there and they'd hold their book up and show you, and you just were hoping, because at that time there were so few books that were representative of us. I was at all Black high school, but there were so few books on stage. But now that narrative has changed, and it is so rich and so engaging and so important for our young people to see and experience that, because what you're talking about, Patrick, is possibility. And every available option that we can show our young people that anything is possible, that starts to frame their head in ways of like, oh my gosh, well, I can try that. You start to take the limits off. And I'm curious about some of the students that you've worked with. that took the limits off? Like, what are they doing now? How have the programs that they've been involved with under your leadership inspired them, ignited them to read, to write, to be whoever it is that they purpose themselves to be?
I like to use. I'm glad you mentioned the term the word possibilities. I like to add to that infinite possibilities, because that's what reading does and writing literature does. Infinite. I mean, it allows you to look at what is out there in front of you, and whatever profession or that you choose to go into, that it's endless, and you become versatile. So you made, I mean, the shift that I made. I mean, from coach to college student to bookstore gallery owner, and I didn't mention that we eventually opened a vegan restaurant inside of the art gallery booth to move to a bigger location. So we were bookstore, vegan cafe, art gallery, and so but these were possibilities. But we love vegetarian. Became a vegetarian when I moved to California, and so went back to Arkansas. Hey, it's like no vegetarian restaurant was around, so I was like, hey, well, let's just a place became open, and we did it. But those were, literature can do that, because now all of a sudden brought my team aboard. We made our own recipes up and researched different things, and so those were infinite possibilities. But back to your question, these young people who came into the program, when I started, the bedrock of the 24th, this is my 24th anniversary of Say It Loud. So I left the church after school program and started my own entity and got my own 501c3. So this month is the 24th anniversary of Say It Loud. Readers and writers, go to speakloudly.com and you'll see the things we've done over 24 years. But this month is the 24th anniversary. But that group that first started with the first 20-something students, these were students who were, we put an announcement out. We started this after school creative writing program for young people. And young people came from different places. They were young, aspiring writers who had poetry that put in a shoebox under their bed, and they had notebooks. They brought them in to the first meeting. And they were finally meeting like-minded young people, like, wow, you write too? You write too? We had rappers, we had poets, we had songwriters, violinists, journalists. These were all young, and they were between 8th and 11th graders, with these various professions, that oftentimes people don't think that children of color are not aspiring to be journalists, not aspiring to be songwriters outside of just rap song, but songwriters, and so we had a young person who wanted to be a business person. He wanted to be able to write business plans better. I mean, they had their minds made up, and they found a location to come and meet once a week. And now I look back, we have a fashion designer that's in the group. She lives in Los Angeles now. Inga Zika Kiki has her own fashion line. We have a Harvard Law School graduate who was one of the tops in his class. He's now working for the NAACP in New York, a part of the Defense Fund. We have a college English instructor. We have a high school, used to be a college art instructor, nurse, entrepreneurs, journalists. I mean, a lot of them found their voices, but they enjoyed poetry, creative writing, but a lot of them went off to the various careers they had in their mind, but they enjoyed the opportunity to understand the power of reading and writing, and they used Say It Loud Readers and Writers, which was a writing program that was designed to just make sure people understand the importance of literacy. And now again, we have a band instructor, band director, so all, but they learn the power of communicating, and through being literate, those infinite possibilities exist. I mentioned the band instructor. His mother brought him to the program when he was 11 or 12. She bought his first trumpet, a used trumpet, and from a pawn shop, and brought it in, and I let him play with one of the poets in the group. He was 12 years old, couldn't play a lick, and his students used to get mad at me because I used to let him play with them. It's like, let him play. He'll get it. Just let him hit a couple of notes after you get a couple of lines. And the students used to laugh at him. He's now the band director at one of the top schools in the city of Little Rock, the brand new high school that just opened a year ago. And his band is, for the past 2 years, has been the top band in the city, from a junior high school to a high school band director. But both his programs are tops in the state. So infinite possibilities. That's what literature does. No matter what area you want to go to, if you are literate, plumber, whether you are a painter, whatever the case may be, literature is part of those professions. We know we have to be certified to become a painter, to be certified to become a cameraman, to be certified to become a meteorologist, news person, coach, whatever. You have to be literate. And so that's what reading does. It creates these infinite possibilities. Even being part of this book fest, organizing. Can you imagine the organization behind this, getting all these writers together, putting this together? You got to be literate. So just all the things that we deal with in life, literature is involved, particularly if you want to take it to the next level. As young people say, you want to level up with it, you got to be literate.
That's the real leveling up, right?
The real level up.
The real level up. I'm blown away at the success stories and the narratives simply because you said yes and saw the infinite possibilities in your book. The Vision Board Guidebook for Young People is centered just in that. So talk, if you will, about what those processes are like in terms of the motivation to get students to see that, because sometimes kids and adults too can live just in this moment. We can't see it. So seeing that, I know they have lots of examples that you could share with them, but when they have that book, that vision board guidebook in their hands, what can they expect that will unlock their mind to those infinite possibilities that you just expressed?
The thing that I also learned about young people, where they may have had some shortcomings in terms academically, but at the same time, how did a child get from high school? How did he or she make it from, elementary school, middle school to high school? No one knew that this child, somehow he or she got by way below grade level, made it that far, functioning, have a part-time job in some cases, working a part-time job. So you knew the child has some level of intelligence. There's a level of intelligence that's there. So what he or she was missing was the understanding of, when do I ask for help or assistance? When do I ask for help or assistance? Somebody help guide me through the process. And oftentimes, young people have not been told that often enough. It is okay to ask for help. It is okay to ask for help. It is okay to say, hey, I am behind. I am way behind. They may not know how far they are behind in terms of the reading level, but for most young people, they have a very difficult time in asking for assistance. And that's what I'm trying to do with my vision board guidebook. I'm saying in my introduction, hey, let's do this. Let's do this together. And in this vision board guidebook, there are a number of professionals in various fields who are giving writing prompts to young people to kind of remind them of what this planning for the future should look like. You have a vision already. You talk to most young people, some of them have an idea what they would like to do. Now, how to get there is another story. So that's what I try to do with Vision Board Guidebook. I have different individuals, who are just asking them to just respond to this writing prompt I put down to kind of help you kind of put your thought process together in terms of the next level. Because it's not as easy as you think it is. It's gonna be a little bit more difficult. But let me make it easier for you by giving you something to think about. And so that's what we're doing with the Vision Board Guidebook. Various professionals in the medical uh, profession. We have individuals who are social workers, who are counselors, who are nutritionists. And they're just talking about, hey, you got to eat right too to make sure you're going to get to that next level. Be healthy. So different individuals, giving them points, just basic points, more, and those points, I should say, writing prompts, uh, helps them think about all of these things that they're thinking about moving into the future, and it helps them with that process. So mentoring and nurturing is something that we have to make sure young people understand. And then once they understand it, let's be there to provide it to them. It's one thing to encourage them with the mentors, but we got to make sure the mentors are there to support them. So that's what I'm trying to condition you a guidebook. That if that mentor you're looking for is not in your home, well, here's some exercises and activities that can assist you with this vision, this plan in life that you're thinking about. We want to help you with it.
Our young people need mentors. So one of the things I was going to ask you is, how do people get involved? You just provided the entree right there. You can connect with your local schools. You can connect with the Y. You can connect with churches and other community organizations so that you can be available for students, for young people, as Patrick has said, in helping to create those sanctuaries for them to read and to write and to vision. Um, because that's really what preparing future leadership is about. And that is what you are doing, Patrick. You are creating legacy through ritual and intentionality. And it is important and needed now, perhaps more than ever. So I have a couple questions I'm going to do, just some little rapid fire. So these are
Okay.
quick answers and quick
All right,
responses.
look out.
Look
Okay.
out. Get ready. What is your fondest book memory?
Fondest book memory, Claude Brown, Man, Child, and the Promised Land. A book my sister gave me to kind of wake me up. I was reading newspapers and comics. She thought, time for you to read something serious. And it was a joke because it talked about New York City, a young man growing up in New York City, the troubles he was going through and facing in life. So it was really my first actual book I read. And I used to read newspaper articles and things like that, but it was an actual book that I read. It was a memoir. And so that was kind of one of my fondest books, even though it seemed like fun, but it was fun in the sense that it was a push to go to the next level in my reading. That there's other literature, there are beautiful stories out there, stories of triumph and challenge and change that could be embraced and learned from. So yeah, that was one of them.
That was your level up moment in literacy.
My level up moment in literacy. Let's get serious about this. This is what literacy really can do.
That's right. Where's your favorite place to read or write?
Favorite place to read or write? Read. I like to, I go read a lot. I sit in not necessarily parks, but I go to cafes and coffee shops, and I try to sit on the patio and just get my little corner, get my little food, and do that for a few minutes. I have not found. I've tried several times. I even got a reading corner behind me. If you look behind me, there's a chair behind me. It's my reading corner that I created. It's like sit in that corner, Patrick, because I got behind in my reading, so I intentionally created a reading corner. Go to your corner, Patrick. And but when you get home, you think about so many things you can do at home. You just like, okay, I need to do this. I need to be doing that. I need to fix my dinner. I need to do this. I need to email this person. So I found that actually getting outside of my house and reading at a cafe, coffee shop, on there, things the pandemic going on now, so I try to make sure I'm on a patio somewhere reading. And the weather's changing, so the park would be my next, place to go read because, beautiful days, sit in the park, reading. And it sort of reminds me what we did growing up. We went to the park quite a bit, you know. At the time, it wasn't a lot of amusement parks, so our father took us to the park. We just run around crazy, but he also bought newspapers and things like that, But so I always keep that in mind. But back to your original question, definitely you know, patios, coffee shops, and a little time at home, but mostly away from home.
Lots of nostalgia. And we've heard you mention vegan. So what's your favorite snack that you snack on for your own inspiration or motivation, or just while you're reading that really good book or writing?
Favorite snack, man. Do a lot of smoothie being not a snack. I, I go to a lot of places that serve vegan dishes, so I'll pick up something while I'm there. Vegan chocolate chip cookies are my favorite. You can hook me with anything chocolate, but chocolate chip cookies. I even cheat, and I tell people when I travel around the country, I go look for the best chocolate chip cookie in that city. That's one of my things I do. I say, hey, where's the chocolate chip cookie? So I call myself a chocolate chip connoisseur. Okay, it used to be French fry connoisseur, but I've shifted over lately, and now I look for the best chocolate chip cookie that I can find in any city when I travel. And it's a
That's
group.
okay. I've got the French fries on lock.
Okay.
That's my job. That's my job.
Yes.
Final question here.
Okay.
What brings you joy?
What brings me joy? You know, believe it or not, well, you maybe see my postings. I love cooking. I mean, I love being in the kitchen, cooking food. Uh, I grew up in a big family. I watched my father and my mother cook. I saw my father cook a lot. I used to see him make party trays and things like that, and see people smile because of that. So cooking is fun. Even the time I spent owning, which only a year, we owned a vegan restaurant because it was tough trying to do a vegan restaurant in the 90s in Little Rock, Arkansas. It was a new experience for a lot of people, but it was a great crowd. But definitely, cooking brings. I enjoy cooking. I mean, I really do because the color of food and what it does to your body it's a great thing. Cooking is my pleasure.
Cooking is your happy place with a book.
There you go.
So, Patrick Oliver, it has been a pleasure. Before we stop our time with one another and invite folks to check out another panel or discussion, tell us what you're working on right now and how folks may keep in touch with you.
They can get in touch with speakloudly.com. Go to my website. You can catch me there, or Patrick Oliver at speakloudly.com. But currently, the Speak Loudly Speakers Bureau is keeping me really busy. We represent a lot of authors like yourself and writers and scholars. We book them at various venues around the country, primarily schools, and after school programs as well. Um, Working on this next book, Notes from a Literary Activist, creating the next generation of readers, writers, and leaders. And those of you who are checking us out will possibly get a chance to get an ebook a copy of another book that I worked on in the past. And that book is called, I can't think of the name of the book offhand, but we will keep young people excited about poetry. I can't think of the name of it offhand, but they will receive a free copy of that book uh, when, it, when we announce it later in the show. But again, that's what I'm working on right now. Uh, Open the Door: How to Excite Young People About Poetry. That is the ebook that the individuals will receive. But that's what I'm working on right now. And just staying sane. This COVID-19 is very challenging. Very, being isolated. It is the cooking that that has me keeps joy in my life and keep me focused. But yeah, that's what
Thank
I'm.
you so much, Patrick, and thank you for joining BookFest 2021. Please be sure to check out the other sessions that are happening over this weekend. Make sure whatever you do, and I'll take a quote from one of Patrick's many works, continue to turn that page and don't you stop.
Don't
Thanks for
stop.
joining us. Take care, everyone.